Welcome to the Geek Podcast, where we can spin a web of any size. I'm Void, and I'm here with my co-host, Beej.
Do whatever a Beej can.
That's not how that goes, but that's okay. We are talking about Marvel's Spider-Man today because it's a really good game, and I've been having a ton of fun with it.
And I got suckered into buying it because the internet was excited about it, and my nephew was coming over, and he loves superheroes, and I was like, why not?
Yeah, I didn't know that was the reason why you got it.
It was. Everybody seemed so excited about it. I was like, I'm going to end up waiting until after my trip this next week so I don't just get started on something that I can't finish and that I really love. And then my 8-year-old nephew was coming over to spend the night with us on release day on Friday night. So I just downloaded it overnight and played it, and he watched some of it on Saturday, and then I fell in with it.
Well, it's interesting because this is the reason that you bought the PS4.
It is. This was the reason that I ended up deciding to buy the PS4 over anything else, because this one being a PlayStation 4 exclusive, it was honestly too good to pass up. That even if I could get a cheaper Xbox One and the same games, this one was the one that was like, you know what? I'm going to want to play that.
Yeah, I really like it. I'm kind of obsessed at the moment, and I'm just churning through it super fast, which you know because I've been texting you about where I am in the game.
And it's crazy compared to where I am in it that you are so much further through this game than I am.
Yeah, and we'll probably be talking a little bit of spoilers here. I'm basically done with Act 2, but I've done almost every side activity. And you're still somewhere in Act 1, right?
Yeah, I'm still in Act 1. I'm maybe 15% through it at the whatever it tells you at the startup screen, where I'm just doing the side stuff as I come to it, and just kind of I was gonna say flying around, but swinging around and just kind of exploring. I'm sometimes not even doing anything, which is part of the reason why I haven't got any further than I have, is because I've been playing with the civilians and just going back home and trying to figure out my way around, just having a good time with it, letting it actually be open world.
Well, and I'm 85% on that thing that tells you how far you are in the game. I'm really far, and it's because I keep doing the side stuff too, because I'm having so much fun just swinging around. So we won't go full spoilers right away, just in case you want to listen for a while. We'll probably have to go spoilers before we talk about story and characters, because there's some spoilery stuff in there. But even if you listen all the way to the end of the episode, I'm only through Act 2, so you're not going to get anything spoiled for Endgame. So we just want to put that up front. I also, up front, just wanted to talk about my one complaint, because honestly, I'm very, very positive on this whole game.
I'm confused. So I see your note, and it seems like your complaint is actually the combat, which it blows my mind.
It's not. So it's not that the combat is bad. The combat is good, but it's almost like there's too much of it, and it might just be because I've been doing so much of the side missions. And I mean, it gets a little repetitive because you do some of the same tasks over and over, when you do crime around the city. But every time there's a side mission or an extra mission or open world event and it's not combat, I have so much more fun than when it is combat. That being said, the first 10 hours that I spent with this game, I love the combat all the way through. So
yeah, the combat, that's where I am right now. That I was just how is the combat what you don't like about this game? I'm bad at the combat. I'm straight up terrible
bad at it first too. It's just that you get to a point where it clicks with you, and you work out a few sets of combos that these just work for you, and then you don't really have to think about it anymore, because you can just execute that over and over again. It's the same thing that you run into with any third person action beat 'em up type game.
Yeah, it is.
So it's not it's worse than any other game in this genre. It's just it's something that I'm running into because I'm doing so many of the side activities. And I guess the other thing is that it's kind of an iteration on the Batman combat. It's not exactly you can't go straight from the Arkham games into this and be completely proficient right away. But there's no way that they didn't take ideas from that and pull them over.
And I had no idea that when going in on this, I didn't keep up with a lot of the development that was going on. That I followed some of it, but not much. And I didn't know Insomniac made it, and they did the Arkham games. And I'm so I was expecting this to be Arkham with Spider-Man. That I expected that just based on the trailers, and then I see as it's loading up that it's Insomniac, and I'm oh, this is literally going to be Arkham with Spider-Man, and that's what it is.
Though. I think that
Did-
Insomniac, aren't they Ratchet and Clank and Sunset Overdrive?
Are they?
Yeah, it's not. It's a different developer that did Arkham, but there's definitely like Arkham DNA that you feel as you're playing the game, just with some of the like reaction stuff and dodging. I mean, you know, when Batman, and I'm telling this more for the audience because because you've been playing the game, but like in Batman, when you would have that like thing flash above your head, and it never really made sense that he knew that like someone around him was about to attack. Like that just doesn't fit with Batman's character. It makes perfect sense here because it's spider sense, you know, but it's that exact same mechanic of like knowing when to dodge out of the way of stuff. Except it feels way more important in this game because if you don't dodge and if you don't like stay moving and stay actively like kind of bouncing around the space, you take a ton of damage as Spider-Man.
So much. Oh my goodness, that you really do have to play like Spider-Man, that he cannot take a hit. And it's absurd because that was my biggest complaint about the combat, especially starting out, before I got a lot of extra moves and combos and maneuvers. It was, I spent more time dodging than hitting because it was like I had to weave the punches into all of the dodges that I was making. And eventually it got better than that I was able to string things together, but you still have to dodge a ton.
Yeah, it gets better as you get more gadgets and you learn how to like incorporate those into your fighting, but then it also turns around and it gets worse again when enemies start to have like more reactions and like more ability to just dodge, or like not even dodge, but just like some of your attacks won't work against them, you know, that kind of thing. Where it gets a little bit annoying. So it's some of that stuff later in the game that I felt, but honestly, like I want to get it out of the way because it's my only real complaint, and it's a very minor one because I still like the combat. It's just that there's a lot of it, and after you understand it to a certain point, it's not as challenging anymore. It's just like I have a bunch of go-to combos. I can just do these and win. So it's more about going through the motions, and it's less about something else. But again, that's like 15, 20 hours into the game. I didn't feel it at all for the first like 10-ish, 10 or 15.
And the thing about the combat, though, is just like the Arkham games made you feel like Batman, this feels like Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
That you're jumping around, slinging stuff at people. It is very intuitive the way that they've done it, and you really do, hopping off of walls and bouncing around, feel like you're Spider-Man. It has that same sense of agility that you had, that same sense of, honestly, brutality as Batman, where it was really, really visceral. This one is every bit as light as a Spider-Man should be.
Yeah, it's so good. Like, it feels like Spider-Man, and, you know, playing through this, it makes Batman feel less like Batman, because, like, looking back at those Arkham games, because there's no way to not compare it to those after you've played them, because the combat is so similar. But you look back at the Batman games, and you're like, he didn't really feel like Batman. He felt a lot more like Spider-Man in those games, and now that you see it with a Spider-Man skin on it, it's like, oh, this is such a better fit for the whole thing.
It is, and although I will say that for some reason his powers initially really rubbed me the wrong way because I was so used to him in Batman that I was like, why does Spider-Man do that? And like seeing through walls and things like that, where you can use your spider sense doing that. It's like, but Batman had a gadget that did that, and it took me just a little bit to get through those similarities.
Yeah, and there are a lot less similarities in the rest of the game. It's really just the combat where it feels. Is. And so, like, moving away from combat, because like I said, it's not bad, it's solid, it's just after a while it gets repetitive, which happens in a lot of games of this genre. But like, I am so impressed with the rest of this game. It's definitely in contention for my game of the year already, because I just like, I love it, and I keep going back to it, and I'm having a ton of fun. We'll see how I feel once I finish it. I mean, I'm only through Act 2, but like I said, I'm 85% completion, so I've seen a lot of the game.
Do you expect to platinum trophy this?
I might. I have to check. Like, I haven't actually looked at what the trophies are, outside of like glancing through a couple times and being like, oh, there's a couple like low-hanging fruit, and then I went and I got them right away. Okay. We'll see once I actually like finish the main story how much is left, but I'm very tempted to try to platinum this, which would be only the third game that I've ever platinumed on PlayStation. It's a really good game, but like the traversal, that is the thing that like has been making the game for me. Like, just swinging around as Spider-Man has never felt so amazing, and everybody holds up like Spider-Man 2 as the game to beat, for like that feeling, and this beats it easily. For me, open world games, like, one of the make or break features is the traversal around the environment. If it's just fun to move around, that goes so far to making me care about an open world game. And it's one of the reasons that like I care less and less about games like Grand Theft Auto, where it's like, you can steal a car and drive around, but they don't feel that good. Like, I hate the driving in the recent Grand Theft Auto games. And besides that, you're just on foot and you're running around really slowly.
Yeah, and I don't like driving in games. That's something that vehicles in games are something that I tend to avoid almost universally. That in the Lego games, I never even played whatever the latest Batman Arkham game was that had the Batmobile in it. Never played it. The GTA games, like, I don't like driving in games unless I'm playing a racing game. And so I'm really, really glad that Spider-Man isn't on foot in this. Like, I'm the same way that I don't even like riding horses in games most of the time.
Well, yeah, like, so seeing this now, it makes me realize that one of the reasons I didn't click with last year's Assassin's Creed, Origin so much is the traversal. Like, it wasn't that interesting to just run across the desert or call your camel or your horse and just like ride across the desert. There wasn't anything of interest between the areas, and the act of moving from point A to point B on its own wasn't fun. And like in other Assassin's Creed games that I did like in the past, there was a lot more like verticality, a lot more up and down, and a lot more just like things to do when you were moving between point A and point B. And that's where Spider-Man just shines. Like swinging around, you're constantly just doing little tweaks, and like you pick up the ability to do tricks while you're swinging. So I do that all the time now, just subconsciously. But things like,
see, I haven't picked that one up. I saw it and I was like, I'm gonna get less damage from bullets before I start flipping. I'd get shot too much.
You should do it, because not only is it fun, but it also gives you a couple experience points every time you do a trick. And if you're like me and you just spend like hours swinging around the open world, it adds up to a lot of experience points over time.
I bet it does.
But like, there's something about, I don't want to use the word visceral. That's overused. It feels like Spider-Man, which I can't say about like most other Spider-Man games that I've played. And it has a real, like, it's not perfect physics. It's, comic book hero physics, but it has the feel of like a pendulum swing when you're actually doing the swing. So you have to think about like, okay, where approximately is this web attached above me? And like, when should I shoot the web to like get the pendulum going? Like, do I let myself build some downward momentum first and like gravity speed me up? And then when you're making a corner around something, you kind of have to be like, how much of this web swing do I have left? Like, am I coming up in the trajectory? Am I going down? And then you have a bunch of other things that you add on top of it through one of the trees that I think is just called like web slinging or something.
It's web slinging, I think. Yeah.
Where you can do things like you can just zip forward without like losing any verticality. So if you need to make like quick adjustments or quick speed, and then there are other things where like if you launch yourself towards a rooftop, you can like do a point launch off of something to keep your momentum or like restart your momentum. It's so cool. And even if you like run into a building, which a lot of the time it feels, you feel dumb, but like I don't smack into a building anymore. I did for the first few hours, but you can run straight up a building or you can wall run along the side of a building. And either way, it makes you feel so cool. And it feels so much like Spider-Man. You never feel dumb when you're playing it.
No. And when you hit the wall, which I mean, I do a lot, but it doesn't really mess up where you're going, because if you're holding R2 when you hit the building because you're swinging along, you automatically start running up the wall, and then you can point launch off of the balcony or the eave, and then you're swinging again once you go down, and it's just very fluid where like there's actually a parkour control is what it said in the tutorial. It teaches you how to parkour around, and it just feels like Spider-Man running around the city. And you talked about where the web was attached. I didn't realize at first how much I took for granted in Disney Infinity when I was playing as Spider-Man, because I loved swinging around the city as Spider-Man and Venom. They were some of my absolute favorite characters. Same for the Lego games. I didn't realize how much I took for granted that those webs don't attach to anything. That this one has to have something to attach to for you to swing, or you completely crash. There is no magic web in the sky. You're going to hit a rooftop or a crane or something, or a tree or a light pole, and you're going to swing off of that. You're not going to swing off of the sun like you do in a lot of other video games.
Well, and you feel it like when you go to Central Park too. Like once you hit those trees, you like go way lower because you have to be attached to something above you. And you're right. It feels like there's a connection to the environment that's missing in a lot of other Spider-Man games that have been out there, where it doesn't actually pay attention to what's around you, and this one it does. Like, if there's not the right stuff around you, you can't do that move, which sounds annoying, but when you're actually playing it, it never feels like a hindrance. It just makes it feel more, I don't know, it feels fun. It feels fun to move around the environment because of it.
Yeah. And I've never gotten angry, and I get irritated at games really easily, and I've never gotten angry or irritated when all of a sudden I find myself in the middle of the street because I missed a web swing, because I didn't hit the button correctly. And it's like, oh, okay, jump and swing again. It was because it's fun to start off swinging too, because you see him be Spider-Man. And this game made me remember how much I love Spider-Man. Jennifer, she's been making fun of me this week because I'm like, Jennifer, I love this. I love Spider-Man. She's like, you don't say. I didn't know that. It's like, I love Spider-Man, Spider-Man. And it's just, I apparently adore Spider-Man.
That's good, though. I mean, I keep getting distracted swinging around. Like, I will have the intention to go from point A to point B, and then I'll end up just, like, swinging. Like, I'll see it, and I'm like, no, I'm having fun, and I'll just, like, swing past it a couple times, and then, like, run along the side of a building and, like, zip around the corner and, like, swing around, and I'll come back to it in a minute or two. But, like, I legitimately am getting distracted because the traversal is so fun, and that is, like, one of the biggest things in open world games for me, is to make that traversal between point A and point B fun. So I think this might be the best traversal in an open world game ever. Like, in my estimation, you know, everybody else's mileage may vary, but this is probably my favorite at this point.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that is really better in terms of an open world game. That maybe flying games like DCUO type stuff where you're flying around but it's not as fun. That's the thing. You're flying, which you can do fun things, but it's not the same.
No, and it's just like, I never fast travel in this game, and I fast travel all the time in open world games when I play them. This is the first time that I have avoided fast travel on purpose. Like, there are times where I'm on one side of the map and I have to go to the complete other side of the map. In any other open world game, I would just open up that menu and fast travel right away. And I have only ever fast traveled 5 times in this, because once you have to when they teach you about it in a tutorial, and then 4 other times because there was an achievement to do it 5 times. And I haven't gone back to it at all because I just want to swing between point A and point B.
I didn't know there was fast travel. I haven't hit the point where they teach you how to fast travel, so I'm just like, I'm swinging everywhere, and never cared. I never even thought to try to hit the map and do anything. I'm like, set a waypoint for my apartment and swing. Ooh, a crime.
And not only is like the just swinging around fun, but the exploration is fun too, which is always something that's huge for me. I mean, I know I was texting you that first night. Like, I got every single one of the towers to like unlock all the areas of the map before I did anything else in the game as soon as they opened up. And then I immediately went and I did every single backpack, which is like the main collectible in this game. And I think the backpacks might have been my favorite part of the open world of this game, you know, in all the side activities.
That they're wonderful. The way the backpacks work, y'all, if you haven't played it, is that around the city, just in alleys and on ceilings and under bridges, Spider-Man has webbed up 55 different backpacks that he was going somewhere and was eventually going to come back and collect. And you're going around and collecting them, and all of them have an item in them from that is just flavor text. You get a backpack token that you can use to spend on upgrades, but the best part about it is these flavor items that it tells you hit triangle when you open the backpack, and there is maybe a 15-second voice description of what this item was, like the menu from him and his and MJ's first date, or a Spider-Man plushie prototype. Stuff like that is amazing to me, that I will go and I will listen to every single one of those no matter what. I love it.
And a lot of it is just like Easter eggs that hint back at, because this is a different version of Peter Parker, which we'll talk about in a second, but that starts getting into spoilers, so we'll be vague here. This is a different version of Peter Parker who's a little bit older, and all of these collectibles in the backpacks hint at this particular Peter Parker's history. And it's kind of like a lot of it is things that you might know from comics or movies or like other Spider-Man properties. And you can see like, okay, this is how they're addressing it here to be like, okay, these things already happened. But all of it kind of informed who this Peter was. And also they were just cool because if you know some of the Spider-Man lore, you'll see how some of these things matter above and beyond what the text says.
Yeah, and I think that's why I love it so much, is because I know so much about Spider-Man up to a point that I nerd out for the same reason that I nerd out about Parks and Rec and stuff like that, feeling comfortable to me. This game feels comfortable because it's something that's always been so close to my heart that I'm just like, that I forget how much I love Spider-Man. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, I'll go for a long time and just be like, hey, Spider-Man's pretty cool. And then, like, I'll read a comic or I see a game like this, and it's just like, oh no, I love Spider-Man. And these backpacks are just those kind of little nuggets that really just stoke that nerd fire, man.
Well, and it all ties back to like that older Peter, which I think it really resonates with me that they went with an older Peter Parker. Like, I think I'm done with the high school version. Every once in a while, there's an interesting take on it, but it's been done so many times by now. And this is what I felt when we talked about Spider-Man Homecoming, too. I was just ready for Peter Parker to be the older character instead of that younger character.
Right. And I understand that.
Yeah, I think we'll get there in the MCU, but just like to jump in to the very beginning of this game and to already be there, like, Peter has been Spider-Man for, I think they said 8 years.
8 years.
Yep. And it's after college. He's working. He's like out in the working world, but you can tell he's probably like late 20s-ish or like maybe mid-20s somewhere.
I would say mid-20s, like just thinking about it, 24, 25-ish maybe, depending on where they are, because of the way he's talking about with his relationships and jobs and apartments and just everything. It's definitely an early to mid-20s feel.
Yeah, and he's already had the job at the Daily Bugle, and he was a photographer, and he gave that up for reasons that I don't want to spoil. And then he moved on, and now he's a lab assistant. And so he's the scientist Peter Parker, which is kind of what he is these days in the comics. I haven't caught up on the comics in like a year, but last time I checked in, he was that like scientist Peter Parker.
And this is the Peter that I love too. It's a little earlier than the Peter I truly find the most entertaining, but he's not the like, I like the high school science teacher kind of Peter instead of the like rich poor man's Tony Stark Peter that he is right now in the comics. But this is leading up to that. Like, he's still an ordinary dude who does science, and it's so much better than having any kind of high school drama. That this game is engaging because it's not that same Spider-Man story, even though it's kind of retreading some of the tropes that you see. I know you've got some of it down below when we'll talk about it, but it's stuff that I know, but I want to know how it unfolds in this universe.
Yeah, that's a really good way to say it. And I want to start getting into spoilers soon, so I'm going to jump ahead and talk about something else. We'll come back to characters here in a second. So there are really, really good accessibility options in this game, which is something that I've been looking at more and more. I watched Game Maker's Toolkit, and they've been doing a deep dive into like accessibility in video games and what that means and the way that different developers can approach it. So every time I start a new game now, I go and when I tweak the options, because I almost always turn on subtitles just because sometimes I have a podcast in, sometimes my family's just all around and talking and I have like the volume way down. I always turn on subtitles right when I start a game.
Always.
So whenever I do that now, I go and I look at the other accessibility options and see like how well did the developer do this time for this particular game and this particular developer. This one did so well, and I was extremely impressed. And there were a couple things that I turned on just because I was like, that actually sounds like it would make the game more fun for me, even though I don't need it for accessibility. I just want it because it's a cool option.
What did you do? Because I thought about putting a couple of them on, and now I can't remember what they were. Like, I looked through it and I know that they were really cool, that they did a great job on it.
Yeah, the ones I turned on were instead of tapping square or triangle or whatever, they're like button prompts for QuickTime events throughout the game. There's an option to hold instead of tap, and I always like that because I always feel like my wrist hurts after I like tap a button super fast for a long time.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I turned that on immediately, and then the other one that I turned on was giving you the ability to skip puzzles, because I realized after the first like 2-3 hours that I was not enjoying the puzzles in this game. And once I saw that you have the ability to auto complete them in like a second, I was like, yep, I'm going to do that from now on. So I beat the first, I don't know, handful of puzzles on my own, and then I've just been skipping every other one, and it makes the game so much better for me.
See, and I'm torn on that one because I like the puzzles right now, and I'm afraid that I'm going to get bored with them eventually.
As soon as you get bored with them, go into the menu and enable that option, because it doesn't auto skip them. It just means that anytime you hit one, it gives you the option to skip it if you want.
Oh, okay. So it's not you load it up and you automatically get finished with it and rewarded.
When it gives you like all the buttons that do things in the puzzle, it'll add another button at the bottom for R1 that gives you the option to skip it. So you could go turn it on right now, and it's not going to actually hold you away from any content.
That's great, because the reason I didn't turn it on is because I was like, I like doing these. There's just so many of them that I'm going to do them at least right now. But that's awesome.
I had to give shout outs to the accessibility stuff because I ended up using some of it, even though I don't need it. I just thought it made the game better. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about before we go all spoilers here is the quips really work for me in this game, which is something with like different Spider-Man properties. It's hit and miss with me. Sometimes Spider-Man just feels like abrasive or annoying or too cheesy almost. And this one feels like it's the right balance of all of those things, where it just lands in the perfect spot.
They're great. Like, I've laughed at them that the quips are great. The only issue I've had with quips so far is that every once in a while I'll hear a repeated one. And that's you can't avoid that. It's unavoidable. But it was like a couple of times I've heard the same thing over and over again in fights, and I'm like, yeah, I'm tired of him saying that.
Is it because you were losing fights? Because I feel like I haven't heard anything repeated.
It's during the random crime stuff.
Okay. There might
during
be some
stuff
in
like
there.
that. Like, I'll be stopping drug deals over and over again, and he'll say the same thing to every drug dealer.
Okay. You're right. There's a couple in the open world activities like that I forgot about. Well, and there's a whole other thing where he does this bit where he calls himself Spider Cop for a couple missions.
And love Spider Cop.
It was cheesy, but it was the right amount of cheesy where I was like laughing about it. It was so good.
Yep.
Like, that one stuck out in my mind as like, I kind of want him to do more of that because I thought it was funny.
I do too. I really hope Spider Cop comes back by the end of the game, because when he was doing that and he was on the phone with one of his contacts and he's doing Spider Cop, and I'm just sitting here and she's like, oh, don't do it. Don't you do Spider Cop? He's like, Spider Cop's back. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, I love Spider Cop so much. And it's just like, and then he didn't do Spider Cop anymore. So I'm really hoping Spider Cop comes back. I love him.
Yeah, bring Spider Cop out of retirement. So that's probably as far as we can go without spoilers. So here's your official spoiler warning. Again, we're not going to spoil the end of the game because we don't know it yet, but we just want to talk a little bit more in depth about the characters and some of the suits and stuff that are going on.
Yeah. So yeah, really, in terms of spoilers, that's what it is, because I'm not far into it to spoil much of anything.
Yeah, and you said that you didn't mind if I spoiled some of it for you, right? Because Spider-Man more anyway, so it's not going to be a surprise for you. So again, this is the Peter who's, like mid-20s after college. Photography is a hobby now instead of a job, and at some point he mentions something, and I can't remember if it's part of the main story or if it's one of the things I just got from being around the open world, but he says that like he gave up photography and working at the Daily Bugle because the pictures that he was taking of Spider-Man, of himself, were being used against him to make Spider-Man look negative. So he made a choice, and I thought that was super interesting. Yeah,
it was one of the times, I think maybe when, I don't know if it's when you're learning about landmarks, which is one of the systems in the game where you take pictures of special places in New York.
Oh, yeah,
or
it's
I don't
when he
remember
says,
if it,
he's like, yeah, photography is more of a hobby now instead of a job, and I think he talks about that to himself a little bit.
Yeah, where he's talking about that. Yeah, I liked that a lot, because a lot of the stuff, the hidden stuff, the extra, the Easter eggs, they cover that kind of personality that he's got. Like the Spider-Man plushie, where he's like, yeah, this thing is awesome, and I couldn't license anything out and make money on it because, secret identity to get paid.
Yeah,
so.
No, it's good stuff. And then like the relationships in general are just so good. Like they feel like they have history to them. Like Aunt May is decently fleshed out. Miles Morales, like you get to play as him a couple times.
Oh yeah. See, I haven't got to that point yet, but I just see Miles Morales in the notes here, and I had to I said, and so I wrote it down, hot diggity dog was I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, and I won't tell you too much about what's going on with him because it ties into the main story, but he's in it.
Okay,
and
cool.
He doesn't have a whole history with Peter, but you can definitely see how they're tying this Miles Morales into this Peter Parker and how it could build from here. Again, I haven't beaten the game, so I don't know where it ends. But the two that I really wanted to talk about are Mary Jane and Doc Ock. because they're
Right.
so good. You said you want to talk about Jay Jonah though, right?
Just real quick, like Jay Jonah was one of those characters who I he's going to be there, and he's always going to be in Spider-Man in some way, and he may change over the course of the game and how you interact with him, but right now he's one of those sensationalist, I don't even want to say pundits. He's a shock jock kind of podcaster kind of guy.
He's basically like Alex Jones if Alex Jones went to a podcast, I think, is what I landed on. Like, he's annoying and conspiracy theory, and like that's kind of the feel. They basically made him like an alt-right conspiracy theorist, and in podcast form. It's an interesting choice.
It works so well, even though that is so not something that I'm interested in. That sometimes stuff like that will hit so way too close to home. And this one
works because all of the conspiracy theories are about Spider-Man. They're not about our real world.
Nope, they're not about anything that even could pertain to the real world. And he gets calls in who people are just like, hey, I love Spider-Man so much. And he's like, why are you calling to my show? And stuff like that. And the last one that I heard, like, this stuff will just come in on the radio. And the last one that I heard was him talking about...
Did you not realize that? It's like a podcast feed that Peter Parker has subscribed to. So he gets them when there are new podcasts in the feed. And you can actually go in and unsubscribe from the J. Jonah Jameson podcast.
Oh my God, I didn't catch that as it was coming through. That's even better. That makes me so much happier now too. That like the last one, he said he was responsible for Scorpion. That's the one that I'm excited to see what happens in the story, because he talked about Max Gargan and how he like paid for Scorpion and financed this experiment to make this criminal. And I'm just like, to take out Spider-Man, to be this anti-Spider-Man. And I'm like, what? This guy's so crazy and I have to know more. Like, I just love where they're going with this particular iteration of him.
Yeah, so he's very interesting. Doc Ock is handled so well in this game.
So well.
You've played 15%. So, I mean, we can, like, that he's working for Dr. Octavius. They're doing research together. Like, what do you expect to happen?
Well, I've gotten to the point where you meet Norman Osborn. And so Peter and so I'm expecting it to play out kind of Doc Ock goes out of his way. He lost his funding and goes, on his own to work on it using the technology that he and Peter were working on. Things go terribly wrong and he kind of goes nuts, or one of Peter's Spider-Man outfits was left in there and somehow messed up the experiment, and that's why he hates Spider-Man.
Yeah, but that like Doc Ock is going to be in the game like as soon as you see him, and that's the thing is, like, if anyone knows Spider-Man, as soon as you see Dr. Octavius and Peter's working for him, like, the dramatic irony of the situation is handled so well. Just the fact that, like, we as the player know what's going to happen. Like, he's going to be a supervillain at some point, but Peter has no idea. And Dr. Octavius is like a really good guy for a big portion of the game. It's not until, and I'm not going to tell you exactly when it happens because it's actually some pretty cool story beats in there. But for a long part of the game, like, he just has, he wants to help humanity. He's working on his research. Peter's helping him. And you have this relationship that grows between them. And it's like every time that relationship gets tighter, it hurts more because at some point he's going to go supervillain.
Yeah, and that's why it works so well, like you said, because the moment that you see him, and I mean, it's pretty traditional introduction at the beginning of the game where you see Otto Octavius and he's got his arms on. Like, he's running this experiment and he has this thing around his midsection and there are arms coming off. It's like you think that's like, oh no, he's about to do this. And it doesn't happen, and it turns out that you really start liking him. And the voice acting, we haven't even touched on the voice acting in the game really, but that's why all of this stuff works so well, that the voice acting is just so well done, that they have chemistry, they cast so perfectly.
And they mess with player expectations in such fun ways.
Yeah. That, like, when he was going through the lab, just being able to explore and read notes and things like that, that the way that Doc Ock has set up that particular laboratory is just heartbreaking to see, knowing what's going to happen.
Okay, so the other one I want to talk about was Mary Jane, because I feel like
Yeah.
she's been handled really well, and I don't know if they're going to stick the landing because I have to go through Act 3 still, but up through where I've played has been really, really well done. So, like, they have a history of a relationship, and when the game starts, they've been broken up for 6 months, and they haven't talked in that time. And throughout the course of the game, like, they get back in contact, and she is an investigative reporter at the moment, and she knows that he's Spider-Man. And I love that. I love that, like,
Yes.
they assume that 8 years in, they had a relationship. Of course, she knows that he's Spider-Man, right?
Thank goodness. That's one of those things. Jennifer and I talk about this a lot in superhero movies in general, that especially Superman, that we want the heroes that we like to have the love interest and friends who already know that they're the superhero, because it's a false suspense to wait on that at this point. And so for her to know already, and the moment that she sees him, goes, "Hey, Peter." And it's like he's full Spider-Man garb. Like for me, I was wearing a Scarlet Spider outfit, and it's just like, "Hey, Peter." I'm like, "Yay!"
Yeah, just that little thing
good.
was so good. It was so well done, and she gets her own gameplay segments, like these stealth gameplay segments. I don't know if you've hit any of them yet.
It's so much fun. I don't like stealth. You have heard me talk about how much I don't like stealth, and this game with the web takedowns and Mary Jane has made me enjoy that, where I take the time to do it and really care and listen and look at my environment, and that doesn't happen for me in stealth games. I get really frustrated and die a lot because I push too far.
Well, I feel like those segments don't overstay their welcome, which is one of the things you could run into. I do wish, like, the accessibility options, they should probably give people the ability to skip them if they need to, but at least they don't last for super long. And one of the things that happens in their relationship, and this is beyond where you are, so I'll start keeping it vague again, but like they decide to become partners, but they don't really define what partners means to them. And when they are partners, there's one story mission where you kind of go back and forth between Mary Jane and Spider-Man. And when you are her, you have like an open connection to him through like a phone or a tablet or something, and you are doing the stealth section. But if you can manage to isolate people, you can call in Spider-Man to like take them out and like web them up. So
awesome.
It's all about like changing the perspective on what you've been doing the whole game as a single player, because like you can do stealth as Spider-Man, which we haven't even talked about, but I have a lot of fun doing the Spider-Man stealth sections. But he has the ability to, like, if he's like hidden, he can web people up, kind of like what Batman does in the Arkham games, but more fitting because it's Spider-Man. And it's just cool to see it from like on the ground perspective with her, and having the ability to be like, okay, get him, and then suddenly Spider-Man just takes him away.
I can't wait for that, because I love doing it as Spider-Man. I like walking along the ceiling and shooting a web to distract somebody, and then just taking them down and tying them up and webbing them up. I have to be really careful on what button I press, though, because I'm kind of butterfingery sometimes, and the only time I've gotten killed so far in a stealth area is whenever I've tried to web somebody, and instead I just leapt off of the roof and like just got everyone shot up. It was not a good situation when I pressed the triangle instead of square.
And so one of the other things with them is that like when they decide to be partners, like I said, they don't really define it, which sets them up for misunderstanding. And my favorite interaction of the game so far is right after like that mission that I was talking about, where he goes off and he fights like the big bad at the time, and she like helps some people escape. And then after he defeats the bad guy, he texts her something like it's over, because like he beat him and like the thing is over. And she takes it like we're done, like he's trying to like break up with her again. And it's just this misunderstanding over text message as he's Spider-Man swinging around the city. And it felt so real, because it's the kind of thing where like tone doesn't carry over text, and all of us have run into this at some point, especially if you've been in a relationship. So it's like trying to work your way out of a hole that you've dug yourself into via text message, but you happen to be Spider-Man and you're in the process of swinging around the city while you're doing it. Like that was my favorite sequence of the game so far.
I'm really impressed by them putting stuff like that in, and with them doing it the way that they, like, when they're together and they're sitting around talking. I don't know if the voice actors actually were in the same place when they recorded this, because it's not common for that to happen, but it feels like they are interacting with each other as opposed to just reading lines.
Yeah, it felt really well. Like this game just has high production values all across the
Yeah.
board, I think is one of the big things. And it shows in stuff like that. The last thing that I want to talk about before we jump over to some Geeky Geekery and stuff are the suits in this game. I love the choices that they made with suits. They divided cosmetic and like attributes into two different things. So when you unlock a new suit, which you can do by getting like tokens or progressing the story or doing some certain achievements and beating some campaigns, there's a lot of ways to get suits. But when you unlock a new suit, you get the suit as a cosmetic item and you get the power that comes with that suit as an equipable like special power, basically.
That can go into any suit.
Exactly.
That is by far the best choice that they could have made, because for me, I want to fly around, or I always keep saying fly around. I want to swing around as the Scarlet Spider, the red suit with the blue hoodie over it. That is my all-time favorite Spider-Man suit, and I was really disappointed actually to see it so early on in the game. It's one of the starter suits you can buy once you get enough tokens, because that means that the power is not going to be one that you want to stick with forever, and so you'll have to upgrade. And when I saw that you could replace the power of that suit with the better ones that come with different suits, I was like, oh my god, I can actually play this game the way I want to. It's perfect. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's so good. Like, and I normally don't care about cosmetics in games, and it's because that they are linked to power levels. Because the kind of gamer that I am is when I'm playing a game, if there's no argument that, you know, X is better than Y because of all the stats, I'm always going to choose X. It doesn't matter what Y looks like, basically, in a video game. Anyway, and I know there are a lot of people that aren't like that, but that's the way that I treat it. And so to separate the two of them, I've actually able to enjoy the cosmetics in this game in a way that I don't know when the last time was that I actually just had fun, like, dressing up my character. Maybe Mario Odyssey?
Mario. Yeah, I was about to say Mario Odyssey, you went all in on the hats and the outfits.
Because, again, it didn't matter because it wasn't related to powers. It was completely divorced for them. So I just want more and more games to do this. I mean, my go-tos at the moment, I have a couple that I like to equip at night. So I don't even remember the names of them because my Spider-Man lore is not as deep as yours. But there's one that's like all black and it has like a neon green spider on it that's some kind of stealth suit. I really like that one for nighttime. And then there's a really cool one that you get if you do the Black Cat missions and you finish those all the way. You get one that's kind of like fashioned after her style, which is sweet.
Cool.
And then my go-to everyday one is just, honestly, I love the one that they made for this game. It might be
the big white spider and everything on it.
I think they call it the white spider suit, like when they're talking about it in the context of the greater Spider-Man universe, just to differentiate it. But I love the suit that they made for this game. It looks so modern and interesting in a way that like I haven't seen in a long time. And there are all these little touches to it too that like the shoes look like sneakers, like that you would run around in. And it's like all these little things throughout it that I'm like, this suit makes more sense to me than any of the other ones that I've ever seen.
The only thing about that suit that I didn't like when I wear it is the heels of it. I don't like the white spots on the heels. Like, it's just a little bit of it is white, and that distracts me when I'm swinging around because it's like that particular detail is distracting to me. I don't know why it is.
The other 27 suits, and you have plenty of options.
Exactly.
I also wanted to mention that like my go-to power at the moment, even though I keep switching the cosmetic suit, as soon as I got the Spider Bro, which unlocks with the Stark suit, which is the one from the MCU, basically the MCU suit is in here. As soon as I got that is the power that I keep, and I've kept that for the rest of the game. I just love that power so much.
I gotta know what it is.
It's basically, you know, that little spider that like comes off of his chest in Spider-Man Homecoming and like flies around as a drone or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That has the ability to like electrocute people. So it just flies off your chest and it just starts electrocuting people around you. And it works really well for the way that I do combat. So I haven't taken it I haven't unequipped it.
That's awesome. Right now I use the web burst or something like that the classic Spider-Man comes with, where you just jump up in the air and he webs everybody around you. Like, it is a really fantastic get out of jail card that lets you heal up and escape for just a second.
So I have to tell you about one of the last suits that you get access to that you can unlock is the like classic comic Spider-Man suit, and it has some kind of filter on it that makes it always look like it's not quite cel shaded, but it definitely has like that comic shading look to it. And the power for that one is the power of quips. So your suit power is to just do a quip. and that is it. It doesn't do anything related to combat. It doesn't help you in any way. All it does is you can trigger it and he'll do a quip. And it's so well done. It's so fantastic.
Are they fun quips? Like, are they unique quips to the suit?
They are unique quips to the suit. Yep.
I'm gonna die so many times.
I know. As soon as I saw that, I had to tell you about it. So
I'm gonna die so much.
I love Spider-Man. We've been talking about it for 45 minutes, which is way longer than we go for most main topics, but I had to talk about it. Any last thoughts from your end?
I'm prepping to go out of town, and so I've been spending a lot of my spare time, even the time I'll be doing other things with my wife. And tonight, I'm going to have to start staying up late to really get myself used to basically have the first day there of an all-nighter before I can really go to sleep because of jet lag. And talking about this has solidified that I'm going to be getting like 3 extra hours of Spider-Man tonight than I normally would, and maybe more than that, depending on if Jennifer wants to watch me do that while we're spending extra time together tonight. It's I'm very, very excited about this game, even more so than I was just being able to talk about it and kind of geek out about it. It's the exact opposite thing that happened from No Man's Sky back in the day when we did that episode.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm going to keep playing this game. I'm going to beat it. I'm probably going to 100% it, and I might go for the platinum after I actually take a long, hard look at the trophies.
Right.
Probably by the next time we record, which for you listening out there is going to be 2 episodes from now. We're double recording tonight. But I will have final thoughts about Spider-Man. I'm sure I will beat it this weekend, if nothing else. But
I'm sure you
I might
will
beat it this week. Like during the week, I've been staying up a little bit later just to play it because it's so fun.
Yeah, this is the kind of game that you stay up late to play or get up early to play before work.
Yes, exactly.
It really is.
Well said. With that, we should probably dive into our geeky offer of the week, which is Patreon. Why don't you tell the people about Patreon?
Okay, guys, we have a Patreon set up. I know a lot of podcasts you listen to probably do this same spiel, but we're awesome and you love us. So if you want to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/geek2geekcast and support the podcast and become a patron saint of geekery. You don't know what that means right now, but you will when you go to patreon.com/Geek2Geekcast. And this week, we have a new patron who gets a real nice thank you, who is Nick Edgar. Nick Edgar, you are awesome, so thank you.
Don't forget about the network either. We love all the other shows on the network. Geekitude this last week, they had an episode about kind of what the deal is with Comicsgate, which is the thing that's going on that I had no idea about. So it was super interesting to listen to. And then
I heard about it when it started, and it's one of those things that with their episode this week and the article that they linked in their show notes, I was did not know that it had expanded into what it is now. So it's a really good episode to listen to, y'all.
Yeah, exactly. I just didn't have the background, and they gave all the background knowledge and then talked it out, which was super fascinating. And then Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea, they talked about the worst book adaptations, which I thought was really interesting after them talking about good adaptations other weeks and in other shows. With that, it's probably time for Weekly Geekery, where we share what we've been geeking out about this week. What do you have this week?
So playing Spider-Man may have had a part of it, but it's also because weeks ago we started rewatching, or well, I shouldn't say rewatching, getting back into the Netflix MCU stuff. So we finally finished up Jessica Jones season 2, and I loved it. I absolutely adored it. I can't remember if we talked about that on here, but I really, really liked where season 2 went and a lot of the character stuff that they did. I really can't wait for season 3. That's one that I'm really, really excited to watch. And so I'm really glad that because of the way that we waited on it, that Luke Cage season 2 is already out. So we started Luke Cage season 2, and it's wonderful. I forgot how well made Luke Cage is as a show and puts Harlem together as a community. And we've only watched season 1 of it, or episode 1 of it, but I'm already drawn immediately back in. That the acting on that one is superb. That I'd really forgotten how good that one was because I'd been away from it for a while and watched other shows and watched multiple other Netflix MCU stuff. Luke Cage season 2 starts off great for me with the way I look at TV. So Jennifer had to work late the other night, and she hadn't watched Daredevil. She didn't like the first season of Daredevil and bounced off. And so I watched The Punisher by myself, and I got to episode 5 of it. I'm about halfway through 5, and it's really well made as well. It is strange that it is not hyper violent up to this point. I know it's going to get there, but the characters in this one, and it's such a thought piece on this show that I am continually impressed by what they've done with the Punisher. Did you ever watch it? Or
I tried. It was too slow for me. I couldn't get into it.
It is. Yep. It is. It's a slow show. It's not an action show, and I appreciate that, because if it were a Crank style action show, which it could be, or Hardcore Harry, I wouldn't like it. But I really love the way that they did this, so I'm excited to move through it. We just finished up watching The Good Place Season 2, so I know a lot of you guys who are listening to this, when I was talking about The Good Place before, started watching it because of me raving about it. Season 2 is now on Netflix, so if you've missed that and you are waiting on Season 2, it is now out, and we finished it up. It was 12 episodes long, and we finished it up last night in prep for Season 3 coming out soon, and I cannot state how smart and well-crafted this show is. That it is so intricately put together that rewatching it is something that most shows, like when we were talking about our rewatching show, or when we did our rewatching episode, we were talking about how a lot of times we rewatch TV and it's so that it'll be on in the background, that it's something comforting occasionally, and like a lot of times we don't really want to dig in on it. And rewatching The Good Place is like rewatching Lost for me. It's like I'm gonna find out new things that they put in that I missed the first time, and I'm actually probably gonna watch it a third time soon because it's so good, and I cannot wait for Season 3 to come out. And we also found, I want to throw this out there, that my wife started woodworking because of Clint Harp, who was on Fixer Upper, who made a lot of their wood stuff, and he got his own show called Woodwork on the DIY Network, and it just came out on Amazon for us to buy. I think it's a 6-episode season, maybe it's like $12, but it's a really, really good show that is honestly entertaining, and it tells you like what actually is involved in the woodworking and how you do stuff and how real, professionals do this, where it's not like This Old House and it's not like a typical HGTV renovation show. Like, it's really well done, and we found it the other night. And so if any of you guys listened to her woodworking episode on here and were interested in that, go check out Woodwork on Amazon. It's super cool. Like, even I enjoy it, and I'm, like I said in that episode, I don't know much about that stuff at all, but even I enjoy watching that show.
That's sweet. No, it's always good to find a new show that you didn't know that you liked, and then you can dive into it. This week, I didn't do much outside of Spider-Man. Before Spider-Man came out, I moved my Persona 5 New Game Plus forward a little bit more. So I had just wrapped up one of the palaces, and I basically did all of the free time up to the next story event. So I pushed that a ways forwards, and it's still fun, and I still love that game. I'll keep going back to it whenever I have free time, but we're in release season now, so it might be a little bit. And then I kept working on the Hearthstone puzzle mode that I know I mentioned a couple weeks ago, and I think I've kind of gotten my fill of it. Like, I didn't beat it, but I got to the point where I was just starting to get annoyed, and I just didn't have the capacity to do the puzzles anymore. So the options were either look up a guide or just set this down. So I just set it down because I don't feel like doing that. I did go back and play Overwatch for the first time in a really long time this last week, just because my brother was on and we were both on Discord. So I jumped on and we were playing together. So I tried out Hammond, which is the giant wrecking ball hamster.
That's Wrecking Ball, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. And he was fun and interesting. He's not for me, he's not a character that fits me, but it was very interesting to see. I really like two of the characters because I'm 4 or 5 characters behind at this point since I last played.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I hadn't tried out most of the new ones. The last one that I think was just about to come out when I stopped playing was, and I don't even remember her name, but she has a shooty Healy Ray and a shooty Hurdy Ray. Basically, there's a
Anna,
green and
the sniper.
No, I played with her. There's one that's more of, is it Moira or something?
Yeah, Moira. I forgot about her. It's
Yeah, she has
yellow,
a
yellow
green
for
healing
Healy
power and a purple hurting power, basically. So
she's a shadow priest from WoW.
Yeah, so I hadn't played her yet. So everybody that came out after her. So I ended up liking Bridget a lot. She kind of felt like a mini Reinhardt, which I really like Reinhardt. He's still one of my main characters that I play whenever I go back. So she felt like
she was Reinhardt's squire, so
yeah, it makes sense. I mean, she feels like a mini Reinhardt, but then she has a bunch of extra support abilities that were really fun to play. So I like that. And then the one that I really fixated on, I don't even know her name. She's like the tank robot lady. What is it?
Orisa, O-R-I-S-A.
Yeah,
she is awesome. When you get good with her, she's a monster.
So something about her being somewhere between like Reinhardt and a couple of the other characters that I've played and enjoyed over time, I really clicked with her. Like, she might turn into one of my other mains if I ever go back and seriously play Overwatch again a lot, just because I had so much fun playing as her. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, I totally see you liking that one. She's one of my favorite ones. She's one of them that's in my rotation that, depending on what I'm in the mood for that day, I'll go with Orisa. I haven't really got to spend a lot of time with Bridget yet because she came out just after I bounced off of it last time, and so I've done a few matches with her, but not terribly many. And I did some AI training with Wrecking Ball earlier because like Twitch or something gave me a couple of loot boxes for him, and it was not my style. It was very unique, and I'm glad that they went way out of the box on him. Don't think I'll play him much.
Oh, that's fair enough. Yeah, but I mean, I had fun, and it made me remember like how much Overwatch is a really good, just kind of like back burner evergreen game. So
it is.
I might try to sneak in a couple more matches of it in between fall releases this year. We'll see.
Yeah.
That's probably it for this week, though. You can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We also have longer discussion threads on our subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
We also have great discussions on our Slack and Discord servers, and you can go to discord.geek2geekcast.com or slack.geek2geekcast.com and hang out with us. And remember, like we said earlier, we're part of a podcast network, so just go on over to geek2geekcast.com and see all of our shows.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter as @Professor Beej, and I blog at geekfitness.net.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Thwip, 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 Spider-Man, Spider-Man.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie.
And I'm Chelsea, and we are the hosts of Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea. We are two best friends who love pop culture and talking about pretty much whatever we want. Katie!
Yes?
Stop thinking about Zac Efron and tell our future listeners what some of our latest episodes have been about.
Well, we've talked about Zac Efron.
No, get it together, Katie.
Fine. We've talked about fan fiction, classical literature adaptations, favorite TV couples, and so much more. So grab your cup of tea or whatever your drink of choice is and download our podcast today.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.